Good morning, and welcome to the first meeting in December, the only meeting in December, and the first of the new term. And I'd like to all ask you to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, as I said, this is the first meeting, and it's a pleasure to be up here with a totally new board. It's our first time in close to 100 years that everybody up here is new to this board, but not new to town and to town government. We are in the strange position of approving minutes of a meeting that none of us were involved with. But we've had a chance to look at it. Any comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion, second?
Second.
Okay, minutes approved. Now we will go into normal procedure in the past. We're going to stick with it. We may switch it around a little bit as we go along and find our way, but we will go with first, I'm going to start out with the first Selectmen's updates. And it's not too long because we've been in office about a week and a half. But we were sworn in on December 1st at the Boys and Girls Club. It was a stormy night, but we had close to 400 people there. It was very well attended. It was a great ceremony, and I think we got off to a great start that night. The next day, we started here in Town Hall. I've had a meeting already with the department heads, just to go over the next several months, and what I will be looking for, what the board will be looking for, and looking for great cooperation. And it was a very productive meeting. I've already had a meeting with the sustainability group that we're putting together that will look at energy policy, aesthetics, quality of life issues. Select Person Oberlander is going to be a part of that committee. I've met with Mayor Martin to talk about how our neighboring towns, the two neighboring towns, Greenwich and Stamford, can work together. We'll continue to do that on a regular basis. We'll be setting up a meeting with Mayor Falenka of Portchester very soon. The Town Properties Commission will be meeting hopefully in the next 7 days, which will be looking at properties that we have here in town that are underutilized or in my opinion, misused, and looking at ways to make better use of those assets. A business advisory council will be also impaneled in the coming weeks. We talked about communicating and being more accessible to the public, so we will be coming to you once a month at night with the Board of Selectmen meetings. The first one will be here in Town Hall. We'll probably end up being, most of them will be here, but we're going to go around town a few other venues just to give people a chance to attend who may not be able to come in the mornings due to work obligations. Last Friday, I don't know if you all received the e-blast, our first of the weekly e-blast. I see Ken's shaking his head no. Actually, about 27,000 emails went out, and a couple people up here didn't even get them. I did. So we're going to work on making sure everybody is on that e-blast that wants to be. And all we'll be doing is basically telling you maybe what went on that week, but what's to come in the week ahead. Lots of community. We call it community connections. And people, they do look at it. I know a couple of people came up to me at the new Leb dedication and said if I didn't see the email, I wouldn't have known about it. So we hope that you'll be able to use it and that you find it very helpful. And the P3, public-private partnership endeavor that we're going to be going full steam ahead at, had my first meeting. Was very productive with a town resident that's looking to help us on one of our projects, and I hope that that's the first of many there. And lastly, because of freedom of information laws and, governing the Board of Selectmen and all, municipal entities, it makes it very difficult for the three of us here to, meet on a regular basis without having it be posted as a public notice and a public meeting. So it really, it puts us, especially the member here that's in the minority party, it puts that person in a really tough position. And it also doesn't allow us to avail ourselves of that person's skill sets and talents. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet once a week for an hour or so, and we're going to block it out and call it Board of Selectmen workshops. And of course, we're going to post it. If we have to cancel it, we will, but at least it will be posted ahead of time, and it'll be a time for us to work with each other and to meet on a regular basis beyond this meeting, so that we could keep each other up to date, and we're working in tandem on many issues. And so it doesn't become that this is the only time that we're together, and we want this board to be very successful. And I know Jill, Lauren, and I spoke about a lot of initiatives, and I think we're pretty much in agreement on a lot of them. So it's just up to us to be together and be consistent and to get it done. So we hope to see at some of those. I don't know after a while if people will come to that many of them, but we're certainly going to have them and be working on the people's business. So with that, I will turn it over to the selectmen, go to the select woman and the select person for the updates that they're going to share with you each week or each month on what exactly they're doing, update you on their initiatives and the committees and boards that they're working with. So I will start with to my right, Selectwoman Rabin.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Thanks, Fred. So one of the things that I had talked about when I was campaigning, and I'll continue to take the lead on, is the relationship with the Board of Education and the relationship with the superintendent, Dr. Tony Jones. Meet with her on a regular basis to understand what needs the school system has, and be able to bring that to the Board of Selectmen, and anything that we're trying to do from a town perspective, and certainly as Fred manages the different departments in town, so that we have a voice in town hall representing the Board of Education in our schools. And that would also be a voice on the capital projects that the school system is putting forward, so the 15-year master facility plan, and how that dovetails in any other capital projects that the town is also looking to administer. Both Jill and I do want to have a stronger relationship with the boards and commissions and understand what their needs and priorities are. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing in the next couple of months, trying to meet with the chairman or chairperson, chairwomen of these boards and commissions, understanding what their needs are, certainly as it relates to the Selectmen nominating advisory committee, and we place people on the boards and commissions. One thing heard a lot is our website, the town's website, and that there's still areas of improvement. There are content managers in each of the various departments, and what I want to be is sort of the, to use a business term, the executive sponsor of the website. So understanding the different pieces and where there might be inconsistencies in the way that we're depicting information, and Fred will work with his department heads and the content managers to make those types of changes. I'll just give one example in trying to set up some of the meetings or ideas with the boards and commissions. Everybody's listing of who's on a board or commission is slightly different. So a simple fix might be just a simple template that they all use to list their members. Some of the member listings are even out of date. The other thing I want to be doing is understanding traffic in town and what we can be doing to improve traffic. So working with Fred and Jill on that quality of life matter. I think we can all attest that there's some challenging ways that people are driving around town that can be improved. We're age friendly, we're dementia friendly, we're heart friendly, but I don't think we're driving friendly in this town. So that's probably a long thing to accomplish, but something that I care deeply about. And Fred has assigned me as the board liaison to the Age Friendly and Dementia Friendly Commission. So actually had our first meeting, or my first meeting with them last week. They have a work plan that's going to happen over the next 3 years. And one part of the work plan is communication. And I'll be assigned to that part of the work plan. So something that I can use my business background on, and making sure that people in town understand what we have to offer from an age and dementia-friendly perspective. And that is probably it for the start.
Thank you very much. And Select Person Oberlander?
Thank you, Mr. Camillo. It's terrific to be here, and I'm very optimistic about this board and what we'll be able to accomplish over the next 2 years for the benefit of people of Greenwich. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been able to think about my own priorities and goals as well, and as was reported in the press a little earlier, I plan to continue to focus on the 3 E's: Greenwich's economy, Greenwich's education, and Greenwich's environment, in coordination with Mr. Camillo and Ms. Rabin. On the economy, I'll be working to develop a proposal to do more outreach with existing Greenwich businesses, to learn more about what they're experiencing, and to better understand the challenges that new businesses may confront. A primary goal will be to work with them to propose initiatives that will support a successful business climate and a vibrancy for our neighborhood downtowns. Some ideas were discussed during the campaign, such as the pedestrian corridor during summer months, and others will develop from the conversations that we'll have over the next couple of months as well. So I do encourage businesses and residents to reach out with their ideas, and I'll be doing outreach as well and report more on that in the coming months. I'll also be working with First Selectman Camillo and Select Person Rabin to start to talk about an economic development plan, and we'll have more to say on that as the weeks. It is only a week, so we haven't had a lot of time to develop things, but that is on the agenda as well. As Ms. Rabin talked about, education has been a priority. She'll be focusing on the Board of Education and the superintendent. I've been a strong proponent of a plan for the Western Middle School fields, and I will continue to advocate for that. I'm encouraged that the Board of Education is also discussing this seriously, and I remain hopeful that they'll include it as a high priority project in their fiscal '21 budget. On the environment, we all campaigned on keeping the green in Greenwich, and we'll be working to prioritize an environmental agenda that will outline areas for town improvement, as Mr. Camillo suggested. Some of the areas, in addition to facilitating traffic flow, that we can be starting to look at will be how to increase bicycle and pedestrian safety, whether that be identified signage or better sidewalks. That's something that we'll be focusing on, as well as improvements to energy efficiency. So I ask that you stay tuned on that as well. And as Ms. Rabin talked about, we'll be doing outreach to the boards, commissions, and also neighborhood associations, not-for-profits, other interest groups. We really want to stay connected to what the Greenwich community is involved with and cares about, and learn about their priorities. So we'll be doing initial outreach, but again, we ask that those groups reach out to us, invite us to their meetings, inform us of what's happening, and so that we can continue an open dialogue, so that we can be advocates for our community on this board. And lastly, we'll be looking to continue something that's been done, actually, I think, effectively at the state level with our state representation, coffee with a select person or select people, and hopefully we'll schedule some out in the community so that we can just meet people where they are as well, to hear about what's happening. One of the other issues that has come up, and it's actually talked about in today's Greenwich Time, is the food stamp program and the impact on our local community and our local residents. We've reached out to Dr. Barry, the director of our Human Services Department, to find out more information. We'll be following that as well to make sure that our community is protected and has access to food, actually necessary resources. So if anyone who is listening to this or otherwise would like to weigh in on that, please reach out as well, and we'll be following that. And in closing, I want to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season. I want to recognize particularly the dedication and hard work of all of the Greenwich employees throughout the year, but those particularly who are working overtime during this holiday period to keep us safe and also connected to one another, which we know is really important as we go into the holiday season. So, thank you.
Thank you, and I echo that, those comments. As you can see, there's a lot on the agenda for the next 2 years, and we're eager to get going on it. The next item is old business, and of course, there is no old business for this board, so we'll skip right over to new business. And the first thing on the item on the agenda is discussion of the Board of Selectmen nomenclature. And this was brought by Allison Steinberg about a month ago. You wrote something and then reached out, really to bring up to our the way we address the members of the Board of Selectmen, bring it more up to date. We did some research and found out that no one has changed their Board of Selectmen name in the state of Connecticut. It was on the ballot in Southbury this year. It was defeated. That would have made it a select board, and that was defeated. But we did find that Westport, Connecticut, actually does something we're doing right now. It's the Board of Selectmen, but they have it in their, I guess, their amended their charter to leave it up to the board's, the discretion of the members of the board, whether they want to be called select man, select woman, select person. So that's what they're doing. And as you can see, that's what we're doing up here right now. So we're halfway there. Whether or not we want to change the name of the board as a whole is something up for discussion. I know I'm okay with the Board of Selectmen, but if there's a better name out there, I'm all ears. Select Board, personally, I kind of think it's a little too bland, but certainly we're open. It's not something that has to be decided today, but we'll open it up for discussion and see what my colleagues think. Jill can go first.
I think we should, I actually would love to see the nomenclature changed to be, and selectmen is generally a gender neutral, it's sort of freshmen, other, but if there's a way to change it and that would signal a greater inclusivity, I'm fully open to that. I think it's difficult for people to understand what a first selectman is and does, and I think there might be a benefit to even looking at changing that nomenclature to something like mayor, which is a little bit more understandable what that does to the then governing board, the Board of Selectmen or select people. I'm not sure. So I'm open to further discussion for purposes. I generally, pretty much answer to most things, but I'll be referring to myself as a select person. Just in the interest of signaling and inclusivity in our governing body.
Thank you. Lauren?
I, too, am open to changing the name of our board. Have not come up with something that, I think, like you said, Fred, select board is a little bland. It doesn't really describe. And I know when I was campaigning, I would say I'm running for selectmen, and they were like, oh, first selectman, because they just heard the F. So it's an interesting concept that you raised, Jill, that even first selectman can be confusing. I'm referring to myself as select woman, but will answer to man, person, woman.
And for the record, I am sticking with man, but when I met with Mayor Martin the other day, he was talking about it, and he has a very strong mayoral form of government there. He doesn't have any deputy mayors. Ours would have, if we would change it, would have deputy mayors. So I think people do, as Jill said, understand what a mayor does. A first selectman is more of a kind of a New England thing. It's great, I like it, but it does create some confusion. So maybe that's one of the things we can look at going forward. But again, there may be some other names and terms out there we haven't even thought about. So please contact us. We're open to it. And Alice, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to this?
Just thank you, first of all, for. Come to the microphone. Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to thank you for taking the issue seriously, for taking it up, and to know, it sounded like you have a communications background. I work in communications and marketing. I'm at MasterCard now. I moonlight as a journalist and writer, and I value words. I think words are really important, and the words we use matter. And if you look at attracting talent to Greenwich, new families to Greenwich, millennials, Generation Z, they care about this stuff a lot, and inclusivity matters. In that regard, I want my kid to grow up in Greenwich and know that that he can vote for, any gender to run for the top position in town, and to not feel like, that the title doesn't necessarily suit them in some way, shape, or form. So really appreciate your taking it seriously. Happy to help, to roll up my sleeves, literally, and whatever I can do to move it along.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's, I complimented Allison because she had reached out to me and she had an issue with something, and rather than go on social media or write a letter, she just reached out, and I really appreciated that. And I think if more people could do that, we get more things done, and hopefully people will follow your example. So thank you, and we'll be working with you over the coming months. So thanks again. Next on the agenda is the Board of Selectmen 2020 meeting schedule. We have it here. I know that Select Person Oberlander had a question, wanted to address some things on that. Certainly, we're going to try to stick to this. Sometimes things happen, and family obligations, work obligations, and other things. So we're going to try our best to accommodate every single one of us here. But I know you, Jill, had some questions.
Right. So as I notified all of you, Ms. Rabin, Mr. Camillo, and also Ms. Hines over here, that there are some potential conflicts on January 23rd. I don't know whether, Barbara, you were able to get clarification. I believe that's scheduled to be a 6:30 evening meeting. However, I think that's the day of the budget public hearings, and so I'm not so sure that the 6:30 time it will work. Actually, you'll be presenting the budget. So, and then there are two specific dates where I know that I will be away, so I've asked if we can shift the dates. The first is February 13th, and the second is March 26th. So hoping to move the February 13th date to February 12th, the day before, and the March 26th date to the following week. And then there are, as the year goes on, there may be a couple of other conflicts, but I think we'll deal with that as an ad hoc basis. So.
Okay, so thank you so much. The first one, going to the 12th, I would have no issue with. But Barbara, if on the 26th we went to the following week, that would push us into April.
Right.
So should we try maybe to go a week earlier? Would that work?
Well, I think it might be.
You might be what? Oh, okay. Not having.
I mean, we can, as the schedules develop, we can talk about that in January if you want, but it's as to whether to push it a week earlier or a week later.
Sure, okay.
So.
To be determined. Okay, so, but the rest of it looks okay. Again, subject to anything else coming up. So
we'll need to circle back on the January 23rd date, or whether you want to relocate it to the morning.
yeah, okay, we could do that, because it does conflict. Yeah, we could, I would move it to the morning,
Okay, so we'll be keeping it at the original date of
the 23rd.
the 23rd at 10 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Ms. Rabin, did you have a problem with February 12th?
No, I don't. I don't have a problem with February 12th, and I agree that if we shifted March into April, then there's 3 meetings that month, so that might not be the best option, and I guess as we get closer, we can determine that. And I think there's been a prior practice on the previous board of people who might have been at work or out of town and they called into the meeting, and I don't know if that's going to be a practice of this current board, but I'm in favor of, if an emergency occurs or something happens, rather than try to move the meeting, that one of us call in.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, so should we make a motion to approve, subject to possible changes that were discussed? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the proposed Parks and Rec Department 2020 fee schedule, and we have the Director, Joe Siciliano, here. Good morning, Joe.
Morning. Congratulations on your first board meeting. I feel very lucky to be here as the first department head. So this morning is just an introductory to the fee schedule. Not asking you to take any action. I'm sure there may be some questions. But each year, the Parks and Recreation Department reviews its fee schedule and brings it in front of the board for their approval. So basically, you have a lot of information here without a lot of detail, and so there can be some discussion. The overall goal would be to have the fee schedule approved at the January 9th meeting, because we would then implement starting the first month of the new year. And the first big thing out of the box in the first month of the new year, all the reservations for the picnics and the overnights and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of important that we shoot for the January 9th approval. But so basically, you have the fee schedule. Our process will be is that once I leave today, we'll post it on the website so the public can look at it. If there's any conversation, they use me as the point person or contact information. They may contact you directly. Some people feel compelled to do that, but we'll get it out there publicly. It'd be an opportunity for people to take a look at it. So we're basically working on a 4-week schedule with a couple of holidays in here to kind of get it done. We'd be more than happy to speak individually to each person, each one of you, about some detail, or we could attend one of your potential workshops to talk about it in a little bit more detail if necessary. Parks and Recreation generates right now, our estimate without the fee increases is about $4.9 million in revenue. And this would incrementally increase it to over $5 million in a year in annual revenue that we generate. Obviously, a lot of our programs are pretty well attended, but a lot of the fees for such as beach and beach access and, ferry rides and et cetera, all really rely on the weather. And so we provide estimates, and because I can't predict what the weather's going to be in the next coming season, but we do, from some historical information, do know that generally, this is where a fee schedule pretty much lands. So all in all, the process that we follow internally in the department is that the fee schedules are given to each division. We ask them to review them. We ask them to look at each division head, to look at other, programs in town and surrounding towns that are providing similar services. And we ask that they come up with a recommendation on scheduling, the schedule of fees. Each year, we try to take small incremental steps so that it's not a huge fee jump and will impose a burden on any of our residents or any of our users. And then we try to alternate some of the fees. So even though in the fee schedule, some fees are getting increased, some are not, we have kind of a system that we've worked out that, we do review them each year, but we do not change each one of them each year. And we kind of alternate some of the fees. So there isn't a burden on the users, and we still are keeping an accurate fee schedule, and we're meeting the goals and objectives. So all in all, that's my little lecture for today. And if you have a question, but on the content, we can spend more time in developing that information. Yes.
So just in general, because you did say you alternate some of the increases, it would be helpful, maybe not in this document, but to have, just because we're the new board, when a particular one was last changed. Because I do know there is one, only from my affiliation with the GYFL, the per player fee. That seems to go up every year. So that would be helpful to have that information.
Okay, we do have another, this is the one I have to put in front of the board, but we have some of that background information, and it talks about the ones that were scheduled last year for change. So I can provide that to you, the additional information. Okay?
Great.
Thank you, Joe. Jill?
No, I do have some questions, but I'll send them in an email, and then we could perhaps discuss them at one of the work session before the January 9th.
Yeah, so
Board meeting.
So to be, I mean, my goal is that when I come in January 9th is to have you vote on it, not to have protracted discussions, but we will, if you have an email and have the questions, that's much better for us to have so that we're working within some kind of format to give you a formal answer of some sort. Okay?
Thank you, yes.
Thank
Well, yes, and you could, more than welcome to come to any of the workshops too, but we'll have the questions ready.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda is the local bridge grant agreement with Connecticut DOT. Jim Michael, good morning.
Good morning. So where to start on this? Back in 2012, I'll give you a little background. So back in 2012, the State Department of Transportation had an idea that in order to streamline grant agreements and so forth, they would create a document called a municipal master agreement. This document would be they actually have three different ones. One's for construction projects, one's for design projects, and one's for right-of-way acquisitions. So they presented these to the communities. A lot of the communities initially had concerns with them, but over time it was stated by the Connecticut DOT that you either signed them or you did not get any further grant funding money. We worked through our law department, we worked through Connecticut DOT's law department for several years. We finally got to the point where it was either we were going to continue getting grant funding or not in Greenwich. If we didn't sign this, we would not. So, two of the key things that were in conflict with these agreements were indemnification and self-insurance. So the grant agreements specifically state that the town needs to indemnify the state, and per our town charter, we're not allowed to indemnify the state. And I see Wayne's in the back, and if you have any super legal questions, I think he can address these better than me, for sure. But that's one piece of it. And then there's a self-insurance piece that the town needed to get over. So what we worked out internally was that the town would fund insurance to cover the indemnification and self-insurance piece for these specific grant projects. That insurance amount will vary depending on the year and the amount of funding that we have under this policy, but it was anticipated, in this past year, it was around $30,000. And we normally with the amount of grant funding we're dealing with, that's probably going to be a fairly reasonable number, because it seems like each year we tend to have additional projects. So we went through the RTM process in September, I believe, of last year, and we got the approval from them to sign the municipal master agreement for all three pieces, the construction, right-of-way, and design. Then, come the beginning of the year, DOT said, hold on a second here. We have legislation in their general statutes on one specific program, which is the local bridge program. The way it was established, it requires municipalities to sign individual agreements for these projects. So all the language that's in these individual agreements matches the language that's in the municipal master agreement, but they can't reference a municipal master agreement without changing the legislation and the state statute, and they will not, DOT's process has not been to go through and do that until such time as they have to go for a future change in the local bridge program. So they want us to sign individual agreements for these local bridge projects. The local bridge project has varying grant percentage reimbursement amounts. It used to be based upon the fiscal well-being, basically, of the communities. So Greenwich was only getting 10% initially because of how, well we are as a community. They have since upped those percentages, and we're now up to around 50% for our grant amounts for these bridges. And a typical bridge replacement can range in the neighborhood of $1 million to $2 million, or maybe even more, depending on the size of the bridge. These are for the smaller bridges. These are for bridges that are less than 20 feet spanning. So they tend to be in the neighborhood of $1 to $2 million. So we're talking between $500 and $1 million worth of grant money that we would prefer not to leave sitting at the state level. So, so we've gone round and round over the past several months with DOT's attorneys and so forth, and it's come very clear to us that they're not going to really budge on this, and that we need to go, moving forward, we will need to sign individual agreements for this specific program. So what we would like, what we're asking you guys for today is to recommend to the RTM to allow the first selectman to sign these grant agreements relating to projects in the Connecticut Department of Transportation Local Bridge Program, substantially in the form attached to this memorandum. So they have given us the template, and so we'll continue to monitor that, the language in there with our law department. If there's anything that significantly changes, we'll be back again to talk about it, but we're anticipating if it's more just dotting i's and crossing t's moving forward, we'd like to get this approved once through the RTM for all future projects that fall within this program, so.
Thank you, Jim.
That's the long background on this.
Thank you. Appreciate the background and bringing us up to date. It says here that we received roughly about 550 in reimbursements for recently completed projects, and anticipated being another 1.25 million for other ones. What is this one, the percentage of this one here, as far as the amount?
So the 550 is actually for 4 bridges that we've completed since 2014. And 2 of those are, I believe, 10%. One of them's 15%, and the 4th one, I believe, is 50%. So that's how those come up with the 550. There was a Bering Hill Road bridge up on Bering Hill Road that we did replacement in 2014, I believe. Sunshine Avenue, we're just in the process of completing that one. That one's a 50%er. Then there's also another one that's currently under construction, Oneida. That's 15% because of when that came into the program. So that'll be more in that future amount. And then there's also Wescombe Wood, which is we're just in the design process, so that will be further along.
That'll be 50?
That'll be 50% as well. So,
Thank you. Any other questions?
yes.
So who signs these today if we're asking the RTM for the first selectman to be able to sign them? Who would sign them instead of the first selectman?
The state requires the CEO of the municipality, which in this case is the first selectman. So as of today, nobody can sign them because
Okay.
it conflicts with the town charter. So it's giving permission to the first selectman moving forward. It's to be able to sign those.
Thank you.
I think my understanding of the question was that as of today, if there's an agreement for a bridge project, it goes individually to the RTM, right?
So,
So in order to get, when you enter into the local bridge program, you have to sign you've had to sign individual agreements prior to the, or one-off project sheets, right? So individually, haven't they gone to the RTM for approval?
in the past,
Yes.
they were going through, in the past, they were still going through the first selectman was signing them. So the way they were handled before, prior to 2014 timeframe, was the state was allowing us to modify the agreements by putting language in there that eliminated the clarity, I guess would be the best way to put it, on indemnification. So they were letting us put basically a star that says, to the fullest extent permitted by law, next to indemnification. And then the first selectman was still the one signing those agreements.
I'm sorry, maybe my question wasn't clear, Jim. Each agreement, was each agreement previously approved by the RTM, or was there along with the authorization in the budget, the approval to sign the agreements?
So there's a resolution in the budget that stated that the first selectman could sign the local bridge agreement. So that's one of the resolutions within the Department of Public Works' section of the
Right.
resolution.
So you didn't have to go with each contract
Correct.
to the RTM?
Correct.
So this is just essentially supplementing the resolution language by providing a form of agreement that's pre-authorized, similar to the municipal master agreement?
Correct.
Okay, so I had just two questions regarding this document. I didn't have the opportunity to go back and compare it. The first was, section 4.2 talks about compliance with section 13A. It'd be nice if I could read this one, 75S, subparagraph E, of the Connecticut General Statutes. Do you know what that is? Or does Wayne in the back? It's on page 4.
Yeah, I see where you're talking, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
Okay. And Wayne doesn't either. Do you know what that is, Wayne? It just says that the state shall have received the municipality's certification of its compliance with section 13A 175.
Off the top of my head, I do not, but I can find that out for you.
Okay.
So, thanks. Gabriella stated that's the section in the statute that refers to the local bridge program.
So that's the new language requirement, okay? And then the other question was, just right above that in subparagraph B on the same page for section 4.1, were we previously required to enter into the construction contract prior to getting certification of the bridge grant?
Say that one more time.
So this would be the grant agreement, right? Where they would
Correct.
then determine how much money the town was eligible potentially to receive, subject to compliance with their requirements. It requires that we would have already approved the full project and entered into a construction contract.
So the way
Right.
that the way we've done in the past with this program is they send us almost like a commitment letter for what the funding is. Then when the projects are completed through construction, then they send us the official grant agreement to sign. So we've already done the construction piece of that. So we've already had a contract in place. And then we sign that grant agreement, with all the evidence that we've provided through the construction process, where they can audit our books, and then that gives us the dollar number so that they know what the dollar number is and we can put the official dollar number in, rather than sometimes when we sign these other agreements, we're signing them based upon what the proposed estimate is, and then construction bids come in either higher or lower from those proposals, and then we have to go back and revise those amounts along the way. The way this program has been administered in the past and seems to be continuing to be administered is they're basically giving us a commitment letter up front when we ask for the bridge and when we find out we're going to start the bridge, and then they're giving us the agreements when the projects are complete.
Okay. And it would continue along that process? You would expect to get a commitment letter first?
That's how they've been working, correct, yes.
Okay, any other question? Okay, thanks, Jim. And the intent is to have this on the January RTM call?
Yes.
Okay.
The only request that I would make is that, that along with the referral to the RTM, if there is a material change to the form of agreement for each specific project, that be highlighted in a notification, not requiring approval, but a notification to the Board of Selectmen and the RTM, so that I understand there are places where you'll fill in information, but if there's a material change otherwise to the agreement.
Correct, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Do we need a motion or something from them? Or,
Yeah.
because it's
We're asking them to put the authorization for the first step.
right, to recommend to the RTM, that's how it is, so.
I think that is what he is requesting.
For us to vote on it.
Okay.
So basically, the very first paragraph of my write-up, I think, we'd be looking for the recommendation of the board, so
But you're looking for a vote approval?
I believe so, yes, so that we can state that the board has
Approved
looked
it.
at this and given approval in that nature, so.
Well, Joe?
So subject to agreement that you'll notify the Board of Selectmen and the RTM of any material change in the form of agreement for the local bridge program, I move that we accept the form as submitted and recommend that the RTM approve it.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is appointments and nominations, and there are none. I will add that at our first RTM meeting, there were a few nominations from the previous board that I placed a nomination, and they were approved. That would be Mike Bacino for the Board of Parks and Recreation, and Attorney John Vecchiola for the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. And as I said, we'll have something next month, but nothing there now. And now I would look for a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation and/or settlement of claims.
I motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, we are back. Seeing that there's no more business for this meeting, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, and before we do, I just want to thank Barbara for putting everything together, our packets and our information, so that we could have our successful first meeting of the entire new board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Barb. Okay.